Big Plans by Scott M. Peterson. Dr. Christian R. Schlicht was a phenomenally successful surgeon at the Gerald Champion Regional Medical Center in Alamogordo, New Mexico. His specialty was a new kind of spinal surgery, where he injected a specially formulated FDA-approved cement into aging patients' vertebrae to ease their pain. By 2008, Dr. Schlicht had performed dozens of such surgeries there and became known as the $1 Million Man for all the business he brought to GCRMC. Dr. Schlicht reported to an outfit named Quorum Health Resources out of Brentwood, Tennessee. As you might expect, Quorum just adored Dr. Schlicht. Down in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, there was a terrific CEO named Robert Pescasio at the Hancock Medical Center, also operated by Quorum. Hancock hired them in 2012 to operate their hospital after receiving a Quorum white paper in 2011 that said, imagine your community without its greatest healthcare asset, your hospital. And once that deal was signed, Pescasio assured Hancock's board of trustees that everything was just fine. So Quorum loved Robert Pescasio, too. Back in 2005, Hurricane Katrina had drawn a bullseye on Bay St. Louis. Hancock was seriously damaged, but somehow stayed open. 5 years later, the Deepwater Horizon blowout dumped 4.2 million gallons of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Much of that wound up in the blood, lungs, and digestive systems of Bay St. Louis residents, who were then treated at Hancock, not by choice, but by necessity. So by 2011, Hancock was a very successful hospital, and so was Quorum. At the time, Quorum was owned by Community Health Systems in Franklin, Tennessee. CHS, Community Health Systems, operates 160 hospitals in 23 states at this writing. These are mostly rural hospitals in cities or counties with populations of 50,000 or less. By 2016, things were definitely looking up, so CHS sold Quorum off with an initial public offering on the New York Stock Exchange, where Quorum stock traded at $17 a share. Then everybody loved Quorum, at least for a while. Quorum arrived here 2 years after a wrecking ball named Ray Hino left the local hospital bankrupt in 2012. Hino had been here since 2006 and made one disastrous decision after another. The most notable was hiring an attractive young public relations agent named Heather Paulson to run the North Coast Family Health Clinic. Paulson had zero experience managing medical professionals, so she got pushed around a lot. After the bankruptcy forced Hino out, a pencil pusher named Wayne Allen took over. The next CEO at Mendocino Coast District Hospital arrived in 2015. That was Bob Edwards. The year before, Quorum was already here, putting the finishing touches on a solid gold strategic plan with the hospital's board of directors. And why not? With rock stars like Dr. Schlicht and an IPO on the rails, Quorum was unstoppable. And Edwards, nearing the end of a ho-hum career, needed a break, so he backed Quorum's play. Strategic plans were nothing new to the local hospital. Board members drafted one in 2000 that flopped. Then after a hospital parcel tax initiative failed in 2006, they drew up another one. That fizzled too. The only real hope came with something called the Hospital Resource Council, a group of savvy change agents, including Mike Dellara, D-E-L-L''ARA. I need to put this over there because this paper goes with that. I'll have that next week. Wait, I'll have that later tonight. Oh, good. Good thing I was paying attention and not operating on autopilot, because that would have been a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm going to continue now. Delara's grandfather was, Mike Dellara, who had some... I'm going to go back to the beginning of the last paragraph because I don't want to make zero sense. I want to make some sense. Here. Strategic plans were nothing new to the local hospital. Board members drafted one in 2000 that flopped, but then after a hospital parcel tax initiative failed in 2006, they drew up another one. That fizzled too. The only real hope came with something called the Hospital Resource Council, a group of savvy change agents, including Mike Dellara, who had some actual experience with strategic plans and how to make them work. Delara's grandfather was a machinist. So that's what Mike wanted to be. Grandpa didn't hold much hope for him on account of his tidiness. Since I was always washing my hands, Dellara recalls, he thought I wasn't cut out for it. Nonetheless, De Lara stuck with it, going into machine shop management for the Silicon Valley aerospace industry in his mid-20s. And upward from there, De Lara arrived in Mendocino County to co-found Advanced Manufacturing and Development. That's a company name in 1976. By 1995, AMD employed 600 people and was generating $60 million in revenue, but couldn't keep up with the growth. So he and his partners sold it, and De Lara retired on the coast. Planning isn't rocket science to De Lara. It's like using a roadmap to take a trip, he told me. You've got waypoints and a schedule. So he rolled up his sleeves and joined the hospital's board of directors. One of his first accomplishments was the 2011 strategic plan, complete with waypoints and a schedule, but it was already too late. By then, a disastrous level of financial mismanagement had already crippled the hospital. A team of unscrupulous operators, CEO Brian Ballard and CFO Jacob Lewis, had reportedly been cooking the books for years before Hino arrived. Well, a spineless board of directors rubber-stamped everything they did. From that point on, the Foxes took charge of the henhouse, and they never left. The only hitch for Edwards was record-keeping. The old strategic plans required too many explanations. Ditto for the audited financial statements, so he got rid of them, all of them. From the time Edwards arrived here, public records requests were ignored. But Quorum's strategic plan presented Edwards with a brand new problem. By then, De Lara had stepped off the board and joined the planning committee. When Quorum submitted their strategic plan for approval, he noticed something missing, the waypoints and schedule from the 2011 plan. So at the planning committee's suggestion, they were added back in. Edwards didn't like that. So he rejected the entire $80,000 plan. Edwards then drew up his own plan and bulldozed the planning committee with it. A 5-minute video shows just how Edwards pulled that off. By then, either he or one of his stooges sat in on every single committee meeting. In this case, it was Edwards himself. When De Lara asked Edwards why the 2011 plan had been ditched, Edwards just shrugged. Look at that video with sound turned off. Edwards' body language says it all. Tough shit, Mike. I'm in charge now. And that was that. I asked De Lara if he had ever seen anything like that in the private sector. No, he told me. Not by me, anyway. Which explains why De Lara resigned right after that exchange, but not why the board of directors backed Edwards. People who sit on nonprofit boards typically don't want conflict, De Lara explained. They often defer to the experience of the CEO. Then I asked if he could go back in time and do something differently at the hospital, what would it be? I'd have stayed on the board for another term, he said. Then it was time for one last question. In terms of delights or disappointments at the hospital, which was more memorable? The rejection of the planning committee's strategic plan was hugely disappointing, he told me. There's just no reason for it. De Lara's feelings are now shared by high-ranking hospital employees. And just like Trump's White House, Edwards' administration is leaking like a sieve. Lowly reporters, such as me, have hospital sources in a holding pattern with Edwards' secret documents stacking up. Meanwhile, the big kahuna has hunkered down in a nameless hospital office to avoid scrutiny, earning himself a very special nickname, Silent Bob. The reason for Bob's silence is evident in a report marked proprietary and confidential from QHR Consulting Services, where on page 5, something called financial mismanagement is identified as one of 6 weaknesses at the Fort Bragg Hospital. And since the cost of that report is estimated at $80,000, it's hard for hospital managers to keep their mouths shut. Even more so after a recent meeting where Edwards told them, whatever you do, don't talk to Scott Peterson. But he didn't say anything about dropping something in the mail to me, which is precisely how I got that report. I'd been after Bob for the last couple of years' worth of hospital audits, since March of 2017, under Freedom of Information Act request, but he blew me off every time. That's okay, because thanks to another hospital manager, I already had them. The audits for 2015 and 2016 pretty much confirmed the QHR report. They both cover 2 years, with 2015 reported twice. So the numbers for that year should be the same, but they're not. The net position for the 2015 audit is reported at $30,551,533. The same amount is reported on the 2016 audit at $32,150,049. The only explanation is offered under other matters on the latest audit. viz. Management has omitted the management's discussion and analysis that accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America required to be presented to supplement the basic financial statements, end quote. Translation. Now the Fort Bragg Hospital auditors are being lied to. Another little something that came my way are MCDH's insurance applications with Beta Healthcare Group for 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. They show the situation for what it is at the Fort Bragg Hospital today. It's so bad that Silent Bob can't bear to put his name on them. Nonetheless, I dropped him an email with the opportunity to break his 2-year silence, along with links to what his insubordinate managers had been sending me for comment, but as of this writing, he's living up to his nickname. My last stop was QHR Consulting Services, which happens to be Quorum. Delara told me the copy I had looked exactly like what he'd gotten from them, so I contacted them to confirm it was their report and not something Edwards had conjured up. My point of contact at Quorum was spokesperson Nicole Edwards. Each and every page of that report is marked proprietary and confidential, in spite of the report statement that, quote, transparency is how hospitals deal with evaluations by others. It also contains a string of third-grade typos, something surprising in a report that supposedly cost $80,000. And as expected, Quorum wasn't able to confirm that report as theirs, leaving it at the feet of Silent Bob, which is probably just as well after how things turned out for Quorum. Hancock Medical Center went bankrupt in 2012 after losing millions in uncollected payments. Piscasio had created such a mess that even Hurricane Katrina's cleanup crews couldn't fix it. Hancock sued, but Quorum blamed its board of directors. That case has yet to be decided, but Hancock fired Quorum. Dr. Schlicht, as it turns out, wasn't a surgeon after all. His, quote, special surgical cement turned out to be plain old liquefied plexiglass, something the FDA had never approved. He was only an anesthesiologist posing as a surgeon. When another doctor complained to Quorum about it, Quorum threatened the complainant with a lawsuit after all of Dr. Schlicht's surgeries were found by a court to be experimental. Quorum was ordered to pay $33 million in damages, and Dr. Schlicht lost his license to practice any kind of medicine, but only after GCRMC was forced into bankruptcy. Quorum's problems didn't end there. After its initial public offering, the truth finally came out. Audited financial statements had been grossly inflated to pump up Quorum's stock price. A string of civil suits and Justice Department actions drove it down. That triggered a complaint filed with the Security Exchange Commission that's ongoing, not to mention a raft of whistleblower lawsuits that continue to plague Quorum. Its stock is now trading at under $4 a share. Some sources question the judgment of former CEO Ray Hino over the hiring and supervision of certain MCDH managers, but I had bigger fish to fry. When Hino was here, Uncle Sam kicked down $558,707 in federal grant money to the hospital in two separate grants. According to the TAGGS website, $473,707 of that came through in August of 2008, followed by another $85,000 in April of 2009, but none of that money under Hino's watch was reported on MCDH's audit for that year, because the hospital never received it. The grant writer never got paid. That's Laura Nelson of Philanthropic Professionals Incorporated out of Billings, Montana. According to her signed and notarized contract, 10% of that grant money was hers. And since she never got paid, she stopped writing grants. Needless to say, that was the last time MCDH ever received such a grant. Nelson recalls that Hino was itching to start an MCDH nonprofit back then. Quote, I advised him that he was better off working with the foundation, she told me. Little did she know that someone had done just that in early 2010. That nonprofit had the same name and address as the hospital, but a different tax ID number. Whoever set it up could have easily deposited both checks there, but according to IRS records, no money wound up in the nonprofit either, leaving me to wonder, what happened to it? Another question that came up is why Hino's successors never caught on. Delara told me that there are only 60 or so rural hospitals left in California and that all the executives, past, present, and future, collaborate. I couldn't quite believe it until I found a Facebook photo of Ray Hino and MCDH's current CFO, Wade Sturgeon, hanging out together. In that photo, Hino's facial expression tells all. And in the actual article, there's a picture of Hino and his facial expression. All I have is the text here, so I can't describe it to you. Hino's now working at Skyway Surgical Center in Chico. That's his third job since leaving here. So I dropped him a line to ask where the $500,000 plus went. He couldn't say, but directed me to Wade Sturgeon. There I asked the same question and got the same answer. To this day, nobody associated with MCDH can tell what happened to that big fat pile of taxpayer money. The closest I could get is with an idea that Nelson had. Look at where Hino's been since he left MCDH and what happened to them, she suggested. So I did. Hino's first stop after leaving Fort Bragg bankrupt in 2012 was at Bear Valley Hospital. During his 2-year tenure there, Bear Valley tanked, losing 2/3 of its liquidity and all of its cash, prompting his resignation in 2014. From there, he went to Sonoma West Medical Center in Sebastopol. In 2015, an audit expressed significant doubts about Hino's new assignment as a going concern. So a year later, he resigned. His current assignment has no audits on file, but I found one telling online employee review from September of 2016. Quote, worked at Skyway Surgery Center in management and not wish it on anyone. NSH does not give you resources or support you when you divulge what really goes on with some doctors. They circle the wagons and begin a witch hunt to blame anyone but them, end quote. The oddest coincidence is who began courting Bear Valley Hospital 2 years after Hino left. Quorum Health Resources. By then, Bear Valley was in a world of hurt, and Quorum was just what the doctor ordered, ready to rock with a brand new CEO who would report to Quorum exactly like Robert Pascasio did at Hancock Medical Center in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. The subjects of this article were offered a chance to comment, including Silent Bob. In all fairness, some of that $500,000 plus in missing grant money is reported on the 2009 audit, but only $111,337 of it, leaving a mere $447,370 unaccounted for. And since MCDH is on the accrual accounting system, those grants were supposed to be booked as revenue under the dates shown on the TAGGS website, which is the year ending June 30, 2009. So where'd the money go? The only one to respond was Ray Hino. In his first response, he went on about how all that money was properly spent, but not where it was reported. He definitely remembered the $85,000 grant, and even claimed that he'd written the grant application for it, which doesn't account for his signature on the notarized contract with Laura Nelson for her to write that grant application, nor does it explain where the other grant came from or where it was deposited. His second response was forwarded to Wade Sturgeon and bore the distinct odor of a runaround. Email inquiries to Sturgeon and Edwards on that subject went unanswered, as did the one to Nicole Edwards at Quorum Health Resources. I sent all of those interview subjects an email with a link to this article as well. Since MCDH needs public support, why can't hospital stakeholders, both past and present, explain where $500,000 in missing grant money went? Do they expect major donors to support MCDH without that explanation? The first responder was Mike Delara, who cited a passage from the Hippocratic Oath on the importance of keeping, quote, our hospital around. His statement confused me. Was that the prime directive here? Or was it the patients? My best response was to send him information about twin studies from Harvard and Stanford medical schools, finding that, pardon my French, keeping shitty hospitals open actually kills people. Hopefully we could discuss that before my article got published. The next response came by email from Ray Hino in a 723-word essay that he asked for me to print in its entirety, which is funny since I don't print anything. The piece was copied to Quorum, of course, and is a total fucking blowjob. At no point did Hino answer my question, where'd the money go? Instead, he laid out paragraph upon paragraph of politically correct mumbo-jumbo on how little he had to work with at all the dying rural hospitals he had driven into the ditch, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, Hino's biggest fan was De Lara. He did a great job, De Lara told me. I wish we had him back. That floored me, so I asked what he thought of the studies from Harvard and Stanford. He hadn't read them. Huh? Finally, we compared notes on the 75-page report from Quorum, the one marked proprietary and confidential. The one he'd gotten was only 45 pages. And it wasn't confidential at all, leaving me to realize that what my source had sent me wasn't a strategic plan at all. It was an internal memo, something I wasn't supposed to have. That prompted me to take a second look. That memo shows that Quorum has no intention of being straight with the public, and neither does Edwards. They plan on working together on something called, quote, economies of scale via backroom initiatives, end quote, just like it says on page 73. De Lara has no reaction to that either. Then I asked if he'd checked any of the hyperlinks in the draft article I'd sent him. No, he admitted, I didn't, and there you have it. The very pinnacle of hospital management in Fort Bragg, California. All the big plans that Quorum, quote, lost can be found today at the Wayback Machine, including the one for 2011, with all of De Lara's waypoints and a schedule. And thanks to MCDH whistleblowers, the proprietary and confidential Quorum memo is on my Google Drive website for the whole world to see, along with all of the audited financial statements that Silent Bob doesn't want you to know about.